Make a motion to approve.
Support. Motion by Tyler, supported by Scott to approve the minutes for November 6th. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. At this point, it's an opportunity for general public comment. We've got a Avastar project on the agenda, but if there's a non-agenda item that you'd comment that you'd want to make or raise an issue, this is an opportunity to do so. If we have no takers, we'll move right into the review at hand. Case number 19-847, Avastar Park Preliminary Area Site Plan Amendment for the German Auto Service. Final area site plan as well, review. It's at 2134 Alpine Avenue and 2189 Avastar Park Northwest. Pinnacle Construction is appearing on behalf of owners Waters View LLC, seeking a preliminary area site plan amendment to adjust the lot lines and preliminary building layouts proposed for the lots at 2134 Alpine as well as 2189 Avastar within the Avastar commercial planned unit development. And also final area site plan approval to develop proposed lot at 2189 into a 15,700 square foot building with 3 tenants, including minor automotive repair business and 2 additional tenants, along with parking, stormwater detention, landscaping, and other improvements. Total area of the lots is 3.2 acres, and they're zoned CPUD, commercial planned unit development. Look to Planning Director Dan Power to lead us into the conversation.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for waiting. I know it's been an unusual start time for tonight's meeting, so I appreciate the patience. We had a good plan, master plan discussion from 5:30 to 7, so it was good to have a break following that discussion. I'm going to walk through my review of this request, and I think doing so requires a little bit of historical context, and I'll provide a little bit of that, a little bit of zoning context, master planning context, and then I'll get into my main points of concern or focus throughout this review process. So I always like to just first orient the Planning Commission to the lay of the land around the site. This is a orthometric, meaning kind of diagonal aerial image taken in spring of 2018, so not that long ago. You can see the Baker / now Weller / Lucky's Auto site on the west side of the street empty. You can see the Popeyes Chicken is there. So this is sort of what the status quo has been for the last few years on this site, a vacant lot that's been intermediately occupied by some temporary uses, temporary parking. And what I don't have in this slide deck, but which gives some more historical perspective here, is that this is adjacent to what was the former Lear plant, auto parts plant, and that facility was redeveloped in the mid-2000s and converted to a multi-tenant industrial building. And the outlots in front of it, which had been primarily parking lot and some utilities, have been converted and rezoned for commercial future land use. And some of those outlots on the north side of Avastar Park there have begun to fill in. One of the images I don't have on the screen, but I have in your packet, is aerial imagery from 2003 to 2018, showing kind of how the site has changed. And you can even see the old water tank on the subject lot on the aerial from 2003. That's on page 27 of your packet here. But without diving too much into the history, just know that there had been this redevelopment that came to light over it's really blossomed in some ways, sort of in the early 2010s. The majority of this redevelopment was really coming to light, and now we're seeing some movement on the south side of Avastar Parkway, in addition to some of those commercial outlots that have grown to the north. One last thing I'll say about how we got from point A, which was the Lear plant, to point B, is the fact that there was a Renaissance zone agreement in place that incentivized some tax breaks for bringing jobs into this area. There were some sunsets on that agreement that have sort of lapsed, and now the site is sort of what it is in its current configuration. To my understanding, There were certain benchmarks of occupancy for the site that were more relevant when the project was getting up and running that aren't as relevant now. But I just have that Renaissance agreement in the packet for some context. So here is the current plan on the subject site. This is German Auto Service, which currently has a location on Front Street in Grand Rapids. The proposal is for this building, which is 15,700 square feet, to be split up into 3 tenant spaces, one being for the roughly 9,200 square foot minor automotive repair space, and I put big asterisks next to that term because it's not always easy to define. I have a red box there at the bottom with a very detailed description of what the folks at German Auto Service do, and I'll get into that more on the next slide as well. But there are 2 additional spaces left over for other commercial tenants. There are 69 off-street parking spaces. If you really crunch the numbers based on your usable floor area and based on the automotive repair use, the site probably needs somewhere closer to 71 spaces, but I think what the applicant is going to try to provide is a reasonable assumption that there's a balance of uses between these different sites. The German Auto site may have different peak hours and things that help to level the parking demand out and allow the uses to complement each other. The facade of this building is rather interesting. I'll show in the preceding slides. The picture paints 1,000 words, so I'll just say there's a vertical metal panel, glass, horizontal panel, quite different from the more traditional brick block glass that you see that was emphasized on the commercial outlots on the north side of Avastar Park. There are up to 360 square feet of proposed wall signs and 1 ground-mounted sign shown on the plan. There are 25 trees proposed, 40 shrubs, and a mix of other perennial plants. A stormwater detention basin, and I'll just zero in on that comment, or that point quickly to say that in an urban setting, we try to veer away from sort of conventional hole-in-the-ground detention basins. They can collect debris and they kind of eat up land that could otherwise be usable for redevelopment. So that's something that we sort of had a pause on during the review process. I think there is a sort of physical constraint case to be made about why this is designed the way it is, which is that there's a high groundwater table here and there's only so much depth for the water to go. So something like an underground detention system would not work as well. So that's all I'll say about that point, because that's really more of an engineering comment, but it does relate to the design of the site. And then of course there will be sidewalks on the site. Zeroing in on this red box at the bottom of the screen, what you see here is what German Auto Service provides: general and pre-purchase vehicle inspection, diagnostics, routine maintenance, brake work, suspension work, some engine component work, drivetrain work, exhaust system, electrical system, tire mounting and balancing, wheel alignment work, and some computer work, as well as minor metal fabrication. I want to call this out because it's really important to discern here. I think when you think of a commercial site and you think of the conventional collision repair shop, those two things don't really align, especially when I'll get into the next slide about how this site was planned to be redeveloped over time. Major automotive repair, our zoning ordinance really boxes into the industrial zone districts. Collision servicing, body and frame work, stuff that involves vehicles parked for an extended period of time. We really try to tease this out and scrutinize it during the review of this proposal to say that we don't want this use to be primarily this. We want the use to be primarily minor automotive repair, specialty servicing for what appear to be targeted toward imported vehicles. And that's where you get into the definition here of minor automotive repair. Basically, at the end of the day, what you're talking about is service without the long-term storage of vehicles. The conventional framework you think of minor auto repair in is more like an auto change place, brakes, tires, like belt tire. And this use does not fall neatly into either category, but I think that the applicant is making a case that this is more consistent with minor automotive repair than major. And I will also remind the Planning Commission that under the zoning that you're looking at, which is a plan unit development type of zoning, you have the authority to prohibit certain types of land use, and you can be explicit about what you prohibit here. So I do recommend that you prohibit certain types of long-term collision repair services and other more intensive auto uses to keep it consistent with the commercial zoning on the site. That being said, the zoning is what's in place now on the site. The master plan kind of lays the foundation for what we want to see in the future and what we want to see as sites redevelop. So there have been some really strategic master plan efforts that have been in place over this site by the Planning Commission over the years, by city staff over the years, and the City Commission. When the Lear facility closed, and I remember Frank saying a few times over the years that at one point the Meyer was on shaky ground in that area, and there was a real possibility of some negative turnover. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but there was some really strong planning incentives at that time to say, let's rethink how we redevelop this South Alpine corridor. And that's where some of these ideas came to light of what you now see really growing on the west side of Grand Rapids, which was more of an urban mixed-use development concept. You can see some design concepts here with the sketch drawings on this slide that kind of show what that might look like, especially on the frontage on Alpine. And under this backdrop, the sites came in and were rezoned to that commercial plan unit development zoning with the idea that someday this form could take root, especially along Alpine frontage. What you see on the north side of Avastar Parkway is probably sort of a hybrid of that sort of mixed use closer to the front lot form with conventional strip mall, to be fair. But we can continue to push these types of design concepts, especially on the frontage of Alpine Avenue. The current master plan effort has kind of reflected this to some degree, and I would say to a strong degree on the Alpine frontage itself. They're still talking about what's called urban corridor, which is very much that mixed use type of layout. But on the back side, you'll notice that the Lear facility and the back lot facing Avastar Parkway is more geared toward what is called enterprise. I should have a big stamp on this slide that says draft. It's important to keep in mind that this is very much the rough draft future land use map for this area, but I just want to show how these planning efforts are synchronizing in this part of Walker. So a site like this may position itself to be sort of between the continuing redevelopment of industrial or enterprise areas with the Lear facility and the Avastar Park industrial site being the big one, and the more mixed use or commercial style of development along the property's frontage. That being said, here's what jumping back into the proposal, because I kind of stuck the master plan context in the middle of a couple slides about what this plan is. So now getting into the architectural side of this plan, the proposal is a building that looks like this with some different types of metal paneling and glass. This is what you'd see coming around the bend on Avastar Parkway, turning down what's actually still called Voorhuis. So this is the side opposite of Alpine. And this is the other end of that same side of the building. The process that you're tasked with tonight is sort of two parts in one hearing. I sometimes weigh what I see on a plan and the way it alters the original picture of an overall plan for an area, and that overall plan is called the preliminary area site plan. When I see something like this that kind of veers from the original layout and moves the boundaries around and changes the sort of the building pads that were originally conceived, I think it's fair to say that you're sort of taking the overall preliminary area site plan and amending that. So I'd work this through the PASP amendment side of things through the motion that's put in place at the back of your packet for the preliminary area site plan amendment. Given that there's an expansion of one site or reduction of another and the alteration of the building footprints. And then there's a detailed site plan review for the individual German auto site. Public hearing is required for these steps of review. So speaking to that alteration of the preliminary area site plan, what you've seen on a couple of drawings over the years and what was the concept sketch that Frank Wash put together with the Save-A-Lot plan that was in place at one point became the actual layout that was the preliminary area site plan by the time the Avastar retail building came in on the north side of Avastar. So that's what you see on the left side of the screen. What you see on the right side of the screen is what's proposed. So this is really taking those two lots on the south side of Avastar Parkway and shaking them up. I will point out that this, if this could bear fruit, the plan that you see here would really be consistent with that mixed-use form or that urban corridor form that you see on Alpine Avenue. If you can get somewhat of a taller building, maybe a two-story building, and somehow justify the parking with that type of layout, there could be more of a mixed-use building up front and this building that's proposed tonight in the back. But this kind of change is what I'm calling the preliminary area site plan amendment, changing from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen.
Okay, one question at this point.
Sure.
If you go back that prior, that future building on the left or the west side of this frontage and Alpine, is the parking portrayed there sufficient to support a building of that size?
It seems to be a little bit more parking capacity than what is in the German Auto site, and it would really depend on the uses that you have there. If you have 6 or 8 dwelling units, that would be 2 spaces per unit. But then, of course, with commercial retail space on the bottom floor, that's another space per 200 square feet on the lower floor. So you'd have to, the numbers may have to come under some scrutiny at the time of a review for that type of project. It may be that the building footprint would have to shrink. Now I'm getting into the key focus areas of the final area site plan review, which is that detailed site plan for the German Auto site. I'll just say that in my review, I focused primarily on 5 points: architecture and landscaping, kind of how you embellish the site, whether the land use fits, which is again that kind of shaking loose the different components of this use and calling it more minor automotive than major, dimensional requirements and sort of boilerplate zoning requirements for the site, internal circulation and parking requirements, and signage. When you talk about how this site relates to the front site and how the circulation works together, this is just, sometimes it helps me to pop things up into 3 dimensions, and so this image was just my attempt to do that and to see how the relationship of the sites works if the buildings are built out and you kind of view them in that 3-dimensional format. I'm kind of jumping around here, but I said there were 5 points of review, and without going through individual slides on each of those points, I will just say that my recommendations that are left over at this point, based on those 5 points, are that there needs to be adherence to the city engineer's recommendations for the project. There needs to be a formal boundary adjustment between the 2 lots that are proposed. There needs to be a shared driveway and cross-access easement where the 2 properties share that access into the site. There should be a set of details for the sidewalk that's proposed, including an overall length dimension for the sidewalk on the frontage. One of the things that you'll see in your plan, and I can throw the plan up on the big screen as well, is that there's a dumpster with a corrugated metal panel wall instead of a conventional dumpster screen. I would just encourage you to talk through that and make sure you're comfortable with that, because more often we prefer the brick block textured concrete type of wall. But in this case, the corrugated metal matches more of the siding of the building. The PUD benefit that's requested for signage, I would recommend matching what is existing on the sites to the north, which is more like the Green Ridge Shopping Center, 1.5 to 1 ratio for wall signage, rather than the closer to 360 that's proposed here. It's still quite a benefit in relation to our current zoning ordinance, which really only allows 1 square foot per 1 lineal foot of building frontage, or up to 80 square feet. So it's still a significant benefit there, which I think is appropriate if you look at the overall layout of the site and how it all ties together, but I think you want to keep it closer to that 1.5 to 1 ratio. With the parking benefit, I do encourage you to kind of review that and see if you're comfortable with the use of 69 spaces versus 71. And I do recommend some restrictions on the use of the building, so that things like car washing, automotive sales, which are really more outdoor commercial uses, and then the general repairs, I have rebuilding or reconditioning of engines in there, but I think we can sort of adjust that based on the fact that there would be some minor engine conditioning. But the wrecker services, the collision servicing, body and framework, paint shop, vehicle steam cleaning, those are more industrial and outdoor commercial uses. So I think it's fair to strike those per the motion. The use of wayfinding signage around the site to make sure the circulation pattern is met and the loading is on the backside and the customer parking is on the front. And I think my last comments at the bottom of that are just the final plan submittals and permits need to be obtained. So there's a lot of other detail in the reports and some of the background comments, but those are the conditions I have left over when my review is said and done.
Thanks, Dan. Is there any comments, questions on this introduction?
I have one, Dan. When you say general repairs, that's as opposed to minor repairs?
Yeah, I think body work that involves the longer-term storage of vehicles is what we want to avoid on a site like this. And that is something that is maybe more qualitative than something we can put a number to in terms of hours or days. But it's something that I'd like the applicant to speak to make sure there's no long-term parking or storage of vehicles on the site. I think that part is really important.
Any other comments, questions? All right, city engineer, office's report.
I've got a ton of background and history on this too. If there's questions, I can try to help out, Dan, but I'll focus on, pure site plan review comments. So jumping right in, the integrated sidewalk that's shown on the plan is a little bit tight in respect that cars are going to park over, they're going to pull over that curve. Essentially, it feels like a curve onto the sidewalk, and you've got some of the doors opening out. Doors to a facility like this are generally going to be 36-inch doors, big doors, so you can get stuff in and out. So I think that should be increased at least a foot, probably 2 feet to make that all fit. So that's a pretty solid recommendation. One unique thing I've never seen before is that the barrier-free spaces, the crosshatched area that comes next to that handicap spot is actually right in front of the garage openings for this. And I've never seen that before, so I can't say it's not allowed. But I think we need to look to the building official to see if that is allowed. Because if the barrier-free space is in use as a barrier-free space, for handicap access and things like that, it's not in use or not available for a garage door.
And I didn't have a chance to coordinate with you, Scott, on this, but in the days preceding the meeting, I did touch base with the building official, and he agrees with you that is not, it's one or the other. You can't have access that's also loading and barrier-free access. So that'll have to be addressed.
So my intuition worked on that one, that's good. So that'll have to be changed. We'll need some additional dimensions on the sidewalk. If you look at the site plan, the sidewalk is not kind of consistent as you go around the corner. It goes around a couple of things. Where that happens, we talk about this all the time. We just need accurate dimensions so that can be staked and not just designed in the field. We don't want to design these things in the field. We want them designed on a plan. The detention pond is going to require a private shared easement for both these, for this lot and the lot along Alpine Avenue. More than just a private easement, it's got to have some maintenance responsibilities listed in there so that if something goes wrong out there, we know that property owner A and B are going to work together financially to get that cleaned up. So that's a critical part of this. The final design for that pond also is going to have to comply with their environmental reporting. They did do some enhanced environmental reporting at the beginning. We had it reviewed from a private consultant. It was all accepted, but now they have to make sure that design fits within those conditions. And to be honest, I didn't get a chance to go back and look through those again to see if perhaps there might be a liner that's needed at the bottom of this pond or something like that to make sure that we're not pulling any contaminants downstream and things like that. Last couple items are related to access. During site plan review, we asked for truck turning templates to be added, and so those were added in this final plan set. And as you look around, the west side of the building is a pretty healthy aisle you can get to easily. The south side's very tight, and the truck that they used there was just a simple pickup truck. And I struggle with, is a simple pickup truck really the truck that we're looking to get around this building? And my intuition again tells me that there's going to be times times where maybe there's a tow truck, maybe there's a wrecker, at least a box truck, at least people bringing in parts, you know, not only for this business, but for the other two. So I really think that that needs to be enhanced. That really leads to the next one, which was, you know, thinking about the access around the south side. I also looked at the access to the dumpster, and that dumpster would require the garbage truck to pull in head first, which is great, but then back out quite a ways, kind of blindly, to be able to get out of the site. If they could increase the width around the south side of the building, I had sketched something up in red. My hope would be that they could get the garbage truck to come around that way, in the one-way direction. Maybe the dumpster could be turned 90 degrees counterclockwise, so they could pull in directly to that. They could back up 10 or 15 feet and then pull out again head first. Much safer movement. We didn't have time to go through this during site plan review because we didn't have the truck turning templates in the detail. But we have it now, and that's something that I would recommend, because in looking at whether this is German Auto or whether it's who knows what in the future, that access is going to be what it is on this plan. We got to make sure that's going to fit for whatever use fits in there. And again, for this one, I believe it should be a little bit bigger.
A new blockbuster?
There you go.
Where's the detention pond?
It's on the
west.
west property line. So it fits right in here.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Any comments or questions for Scott? I guess with regard to the handicap space, be relocating, and it might affect their parking count.
Seems like they'd probably lose two then.
So, any other comments, questions? We have the applicant come forward, please, and to the podium.
Good evening. Thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for coming out. We're the only people tonight. This is like our first for me ever. I'm with Pinnacle Construction, James Lewis, representing German Auto. They're going to come up and tell you a little more about their business. I think we've done a lot of work on this project, and I'm really excited about this building. It's a nice, tight, modern building for a nice, tight German auto repair company. They've been in business for 20, 25 years. 50 years, wow, older than there.
You say 125.
Yeah, and yeah, we've done a lot of work with Dan and Scott to get the site into shape, and I'm pretty happy with where we ended up. Yeah, in terms of the restrictions that I think are being suggested, I think the words general repairs concern me. Restricting something like that is fairly broad, so if you could narrow that, I think that'd be beneficial for the use. And yeah, Jeff can speak more about some of the site plan decisions that we've made and how we might respond to some of these comments that are coming out right now. So without further ado, I'll have Ben and Joe from German Auto come up.
Good evening. Thanks for taking the time. I'm Ben Zao. This is my brother Joe Zao. We're the current owners and operators of German Auto Service. So German Auto has served the Grand Rapids area since the late 1950s, actually. It was opened by Eric Meckler, an enterprising German immigrant. Eric had a shop that gained a reputation in the area for expert German auto repairs. Since then, it's changed location a couple of times, changed ownership a couple of times, but maintained a reputation for honesty and expertise. So Joe and I purchased the business from the second owners in 2011, and since then we've worked hard and gotten some consistent growth. We've added staff and we've streamlined the operations to maximize our efficiency, but our current location is limiting our growth. We just don't have the capacity to keep up with demand. So moving to this proposed larger location would allow us to better serve our customers and continue to grow our business. So we do take great pride in the work that we do and the cleanliness of our shop. Our customers demand that, a high level of professionalism and organization. So we're trying to create an experience more akin to a high-end car dealership than a neighborhood garage. So we do service specifically German cars. Primarily, there are late model vehicles just out of warranty. We do work on a few vintage and collector cars as well. So you saw the list of some of the services that we provide, but it's basically preventative maintenance, diagnosis, inspections, and replacement of any faulty components. So this proposed property in Walker would serve as an ideal location for our business. Its proximity to downtown Grand Rapids means we can continue to serve our customers who live and work there. The easy access to two major highways ensures that our customers coming from out of town can reach us without any great hassle. And the proximity to stores and services in the area would add convenience to our customers and revenue for our new neighbors. So with this new space, we would like to add additional staff and increase our capacity. We are excited to be part of revitalizing this very underutilized parcel, and we hope that our business and our affluent customer base that we bring with us can help to ensure the vitality of the area. Sorry, I had to write all that down and read it, but I'm just not a great public speaker. Hope I got everything across.
No, we thank you very much.
Great.
Any questions from the commission?
I have a comment.
Okay,
I'm hearing problematic, anytime a zoning ordinance definition is too general, there can be issues. So I do see the specific phrase that we are hung up on: general repairs, rebuilding, or reconditioning of engines, motor vehicles, or trailers. The intent that I read in that definition for major automotive repair is that long-term intensive restoration aspect, and I think if it's suitable for the planning commission, you could look at striking that, or if you wanted to find a way to quantify what constitutes a major repair, rebuilding, or reconditioning of any of the engine or any vehicle body work, that may be appropriate. But then we do have also included in here body frame and fender straightening or repair. We also have wrecker service with storage of vehicles and collision servicing as other things that we're prohibiting. So I think understanding that we're prohibiting specific things that are more related to long-term collision repair, you may consider just striking that whole phrase: general repairs, rebuilding, or reconditioning of engines, motor vehicles, or trailers. And whoever reads the motion, if you want to consider that, I can give you a copy of this with that stricken. But that's something that's obviously up for discussion.
Tyler?
I totally agree that that should be struck from the record, because it's really ambiguous. What is a major engine repair or reconditioning? I mean, if I want my heads replaced, oh, is that major or minor? You know, or I want, you know, bigger pistons or longer push rods or whatever put in, you know, a new cam put in. What is major? I can't agree to read that into a restriction, so.
Okay, any other perspective on that?
I agree with that.
Yep, I agree with that too. Comment to you guys, like if somebody comes in, like I guess what we're looking at, I'm thinking about like a total wreck, and it's sitting in your parking lot for a week, and it's dripping oil and gas and everything or whatever because the wrecker just dropped it off. Do you do that kind of stuff, or is it just, it says here, you know, minor fabrication on, you know, I mean, dents and stuff like that? Are you talking a whole, do you do that now or no?
I see this and I see that.
Right, so I think I understand what you're asking. We don't do any kind of body work at all.
Okay,
So when you say a wreck, you mean something that probably was an accident.
right, it's, airbags are gone and everything.
Done. We send them to a body shop. We're talking cars that are generally driven in, or if they're brought in on a tow truck, it's because it's broken mechanically, not because there's any physical damage.
Right, because it just won't start.
Correct. So no body panel replacement, no painting, no sanding, really. It's more replacement of components.
I don't think his mic is on.
But are we concerned about cars sitting outside waiting for 2 weeks for parts, or, I mean, to me, if they wanted to repair a door and they did it inside, pulled it in, repaired the door, parked it outside and told the owner to come and get it, is that a problem? I don't know.
Well, maybe the interior layout, how many bays, service bays do you have?
Sure, that'd be 10 days,
10 bays.
and then a additional alignment rack, some storage.
So typically, if someone comes in and you're going through your review, seeing what needs to be repaired, and, okay, it's missing a couple of parts that aren't readily available, what generally takes place with that car? Does it stay within a service bay, or is it relocated outside?
It just depends on how long the part is gonna take to get, so if it's within a day, it'll probably stay in the bay. If it's gonna take a day or two to get, which sometimes this happens because the cars are not, parts are not.
Can you press the button on the thing? I think you got knocked out. There you go.
Ah, better?
Yes.
Okay, I can hear myself really well. Yeah, so if it's gonna be a day or two on the part, either we'll find a bay that's not in use and store it in there, or we'll bring it outside and leave it outside until the part's available. But I would say most of the cars we work on, we're done with them within a day or two. Once in a great while, it'll be 3-4 days, a week, something like that.
And I could add we work on an appointment basis, so it's not as if we're just victim to whatever gets towed in. We try to schedule everything, have the parts ready for a quick turnover. So the goal is to have the car in and out within a day. Sometimes it's hard to get parts, so.
Well, as we're talking about the sufficiency of on-site parking, arguably, they have as many as 10 spaces within the building by design.
Yeah.
And it's a repair establishment, so it wouldn't be unusual to, if it's going to take more than a day, that you might have that vehicle inside, and it doesn't really require as many parking spaces outside the building.
I agree with that.
Yeah, we intend to utilize the spaces, so if we can fill them with cars and have extra room in the outdoor parking area, then that would be what we'd probably try and do.
Now, you mentioned in your introduction that you're moving to this location to expand. Is your thought here to be able to, if need be, over time, to occupy those additional vacant spaces that are up for initial rent?
Yes, that's one of the appeals of this design, is that we have the potential to expand pretty easily, should we need the extra space.
Okay.
Right now, we're in a 6,000 square foot building, and so this is already quite a bit larger than we have, so, but then again, we're consistently busy, so we'll see.
Okay.
Or at least some kind of complementary business. We envisioned, if there could be something automotive related that somehow creates a synergy between us, outstanding.
Yeah. Now, in the city engineer's review, it looks like there's a couple of issues with respect to parking, handicap parking, one of, at least infringing upon a garage door area, and some dimensional recommendations as far as circulation around the building. I don't know, you or your architect have any responses to those issues?
I guess I would probably defer to James more than us,
Or this gentleman here.
or this gentleman. Sure.
This will bring everybody up tonight.
Yes.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Brinks, I'm with Venture Engineering, worked on preparing the site plans tonight, so I'll be happy to respond to the comments regarding the engineering concerns. First of all, with regard to the handicap spaces, we can certainly adjust that. Technically, by ADA, we're only required to have one van space for the number of barrier-free spaces that are provided on the site. So what we can do, most of those spaces, because of the odd dimensions between the overhead doors, a lot of those spaces exceed your minimum requirements for the width of a parking space. So we can make adjustments through there to make sure that the barrier-free spaces that don't need to be van that are in front of the doors have the appropriate amount of space. So that shouldn't be an issue. With regard to the access around the back, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, the intention with this business is to really not have larger vehicles utilizing the back, but I understand the long view that Scott brings up about, you know, potential in the future. So we can certainly adjust that to make that a little bit wider coming around the back to allow for larger vehicles. And, you know, we'll run I can run the template around to see if, you know, it makes more sense to adjust that trash enclosure to have them coming in that way. And, you know, I can work with Scott on that too, see which way works the best in the end. And I think finally, with regard to the apron, that shouldn't be a problem either. We can expand that out, and there's additional room along the right-of-way. And the other comments were no big deal, dimensions and things like that.
Those doors have to open out? I know some of them open in, some of them open out.
For the from the building itself, I don't know. Are they?
Didn't check it. I think we're over the size where you didn't know that, though.
I think you actually, when you go out, you have to be able to, can't open it up on the way out for fire.
It's called a suicide note.
Are you referring to the ones that are on the two tenant spaces, Scott?
No, on the north building, the building that would be German Auto, a lot of their exterior doors open out. So it just eats up a lot of the sidewalk space for somebody that might be walking down the sidewalk when the door opens. And there's a bumper for a truck, and there's a door opening, and you got nowhere to go. And
Two of the doors open outside in the building and two open on the inside, so.
It's most likely they'll be open out because they'll have to be egress. Your pathways in terms of distance will be too great for the type of occupancy that they have.
so my recommendation remains to have that wider then.
It should be the way you recommended, yeah.
Yeah, the two smaller tenant spaces they can open in because they're under the square footage. The two in German Auto, those, they don't really, they're emergency egress doors only. They're not really going to be used for supplies or anything like that. They're only on the front side. They're only really there for egress purposes in case of a fire. The one on the back side, they could load from there if they wanted to. So that's why they're that way.
but still, even though we can make it wider.
Sounds like
Yep.
I think that might lead us back to I think a point that Dan raised with regard to the dumpster enclosure. Corrugated metal, we generally have it a brick or a block.
Cinder block, yeah.
Cinder block. And generally that matches the building materials on the main building. In this case, they're using corrugated metal on the main building, and they're proposing to complement that. What's the feeling of the commission here?
I don't have a problem with it if it's well built.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. I mean, they'll want to take some precautions on the inside with pipe bollards and that kind of stuff because it's going to get smashed around by the dumpster, but you know, they'll have to do that to protect it. Otherwise, they're going to have to keep rebuilding it. But if it matches the building, to me, that seems.
Cinder blocks too when they have them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a reality too. My bigger issue is the circulation around the back. I don't have any issue. I think it's great what they're doing and happy to have them here. But the circulation around the back is where I was having my biggest hang up on that. I even wondered, I mentioned it to Stephen too, do we consider a potential like a cross-access agreement that's on that south side that could tie to the front lot? You know, that splits between.
Yeah.
You know, that splits between that detention area there. It might really make for much better movement, especially in the future. And they're really not giving up much to do that.
Let's get that on the screen. I think that is something we brought up in site plan review, and it would be great to see this whole site connect and be all. So you're talking about on the south side down here?
Yeah, just trying to make some sort of connection tight to that property line there and utilize as much as they can right there with that building corner being where it is, it really becomes almost too tight, and you want to kind of have it where
Well, you
you'd have two ways to get out of there if that became a problem.
can move that curb further south and get more swing room around the corner of the building too.
Yeah, and I'm looking at it from a future standpoint too. If for
Both
whatever
ways.
reason things get plugged up there, having multiple ways to get out of that isn't a bad scenario there. Plus, who knows what kind of business ends up going in on that corner piece there. You know, maybe it's a small restaurant, and maybe there's some other kind of restaurant that goes up in the front, and somebody goes to the front one and says, "Oh, it's too busy. I'll go to that one over there." Just your movement here seems to be where it feels like you should have a little bit more of a cross access to complement the two.
Or chop a little corner off the building to get a bigger turning radius. I could say shorten the building, but that probably won't fly.
They've got the angle of that south property line working in their favor too.
Yeah,
And
to make that corner.
It wasn't extreme grading there, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like you had room to move that. And then, Jason's idea is outstanding. Think about maybe, that easement going, cross access easement going to their property line. You don't have to build anything there necessarily, but if the easement's there, it helps us in the future to, it keeps it in play.
Yeah, I think it provides relief for an area that could end up getting kind of plugged up. And if we know we're already tight, let's have something in place for what that front building is.
Yeah, so like building on the concept that we're going to have some successful, thriving businesses here, I think we would like that connectivity. I kind of think, I liken it to if anybody ever goes to the Olive Garden and then the movie theater over on my side of town, they have a similar type of access on the back side, would be the south side of that site, where you can kind of get through a more narrow lane, but you can get from one site to the other instead of having to go all the way around and deal with the traffic that we have over on Center Drive. So things like that are always, I think, good to build in here.
These are really great planning comments, and I think it makes a lot of sense to design these sites together. And let's zoom out and look at the parcel fabric. Can you guys tell us where you are in the process of designing a boundary adjustment? Because what I'm hearing people say is that there may be some flexibility there, but it would require a little bit of stormwater detention redesign and perhaps a little bit of a layout redesign on the adjacent site. But if the lot lines are able to be moved, then there may be a way to maybe shore this up and expand.
I mean, it's theoretically possible. You have minimum building widths, right, for the future building, so you don't want to make it too narrow that you're preventing use from coming in. You have minimum parking widths, and assuming that A plus B equals your detention, and we still can shrink it that way and expand it that way, yeah, sure, that's fine. But if it doesn't, I don't know. I mean,
It can always be adjusted in the future if the easement's in place. The pond will be underneath an easement, and if that next person comes in and we say, you gotta tweak the south side of that pond to be able to get a 24-foot paved path through there because we know what you're gonna be and it makes sense, we can still do it. So you don't have to have it all engineered out in advance, I don't think.
Yeah, the easement is just a recording of it saying it will go in, so.
I mean, the future, the land, the guy who owns the whole parcel, right, who wants to develop the other part, we're building the detention pond big enough that he doesn't have to modify it later. I think that's one of it, one of the goals of the project. So if, I think we're going to be required to put an access road, or he would be required to put an access road between the two in the future, and that would require modifying the pond, then I would have to go back and renegotiate that with him. Not a given.
Well, I've just pulled up Kent County Parcel Viewer, and it looks like there's a public street right away to the south of this parcel on this east half. And if that's a public right of way and it can be vacated, there could be some additional land picked up to go south of that proposed building and open that up for turning and two-way traffic, and I know it's probably not something you want to hear at this point, but I think it's worth something to look at.
Yeah, but an easy way out of this is just to require a cross-access agreement that goes, you know, for that whatever feet that it is, not saying that the agreement, or not saying that the access goes in. It's just getting that in place now so you have it covered for the future. They don't have to renegotiate anything with their property owner because all they're doing is saying that there's an agreement that if that front building goes in, then it could potentially go to the back. They may come to us and we might say, no, it doesn't make any sense at that time. We don't want to exercise it. But this is the only chance we have to actually get it in place.
See where I'm talking there?
I do, so that's one thing, and I think if there is a public street right of way left over, it'd be just on this eastern half here, because this looks like private property.
Oh, yes, Baker owns that building with the brown roof, but that strip where your cursor is, and then that little narrow strip down there, that's probably an alleyway, but that looks like public right of way.
And I'm not sure how neatly that would align with the plan, but I think to have something in place that allows a mechanism to connect those lots together in the future is a valuable thing. So
Oh, absolutely.
if there's a way to have a commitment to maybe just immediately adjoining that southern lot line, 24-foot wide cross-access easement to the boundary of the lot, that might be something the planning commission could consider. And there are ways to tweak both plans, I'm looking at the plans, so you don't know what I'm looking at here, but there may be a way to tweak both sites so that you have maybe in the future a different circulation pattern on this site. Maybe you have diagonal parking and something that would allow you to shore things up a little bit to save some space and get that connection through. Cross-access is a good concept. So if you wanted to have a condition related to having an easement in place for that in the future, I think that would be a reasonable thing to ask, especially because you're considering both of these parcels together as a PUD preliminary area site plan amendment.
Okay, your clients, are they okay with it as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how it would impact us really at all, so as long as we can make the deal happen with the landowner, then that's perfectly fine.
This isn't let's make a deal.
But there could be a future benefit to you if that happens, because you'd have another way to get around that narrower side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't see a downside on that.
No, yeah, agreed.
Minor point, but a point that should go spoken about is that in an urban context, you can be a little more flexible on green belts and landscaping. And I say that because this strip would be very close to that lot line, if not right on the lot line, but I think that's where you weigh your different benefits, and for the circulation benefit, and the connectivity benefit between these sites, I think you can forego some of the buffer area that was there before.
Okay. We're just about there. I think there was one other point to clarify with regard to the allowance for sign display.
Yep.
Where are we at there, Dan?
So I guess my take on that would be that the signage is really oriented toward Voorhees Avastar Park, is that right? So the intent is not really to advertise the business from Alpine, which also means adding more clutter to the already sign-heavy Alpine corridor. It's really to have robust signage on the front walls of these buildings for these businesses on Voorhees Avastar. And I think in context with what's surrounding this site, if you can get it to match, I think that's appropriate, even though the 1.5 to 1 is way higher than we would allow for new sites. But that being said, I would encourage you to, I think it'd just take a little bit of shrinking down, scaling down of all three signs proposed, just to keep it within that 1.5 to 1 ratio that's in the Avastar 2 building.
Do you have the elevations?
You're talking 21 square feet?
The building is somewhere around two,
Well, you're talking, they proposed 360?
that was what I added up, I think, from your elevation plan.
Yeah, 360 square feet down to 339? That seems a little bit picky to me.
I would just like to point out, we do have one sign on the Alpine face of the building, which is why I want the elevations up. So the majority are on the Avastar side, but
I don't have that sign on here.
we have one on the north.
I don't have an issue with the signage being the size here. It seems appropriate. I would be more concerned with what happens on the future building. If you allow the 360 here, are you putting a precedence in place that you're getting into that same thing with the face of the buildings that would go along Alpine? I mean, I think that what they have is appropriate. I'm more concerned with what follows it.
They get the same proportional amount of signage, right?
Yeah, that's my fear is
So if
that,
they get 1.2% or 1.2 here, those could get 1.2 as well.
right, somebody starts making that same argument, like why would you do it here and not there? And it would be a tough case for us to say, because they're adjoining lots, yeah, your neighbor can't quite have it.
Oh, even the
But they
same
front
building.
on Alpine. This doesn't front on Alpine. There's a good argument to say, the development on Alpine, we've restricted the signage to such and such. There's a little bit more leeway, just like when, Beaner's, Big B came in, said they wanted a sign on the back wall, the B.
Yeah.
You know, we said, oh, that faces everybody else, so yeah, go ahead.
Was the sign dimensions taken as a block or as a actual,
I traced it around the letters. So, German Auto Service goes that.
so it's maximizing it. I mean, it's at its full,
There is, yeah, Terminado does have the back signage. So, yeah, this is the 360, including these three signs, two on Voorhees, one on the back side there.
Can you move it up an inch?
Oh, you missed the one on the,
Okay. So there's it, so that is 360, I apologize, yeah. So that's 100 here, 100 here, 160 here. And I think Tyler's right, I mean, that's a small proportion increase in comparison with the 1.5 to 1 that you see on the north side of Avastar Parkway. But I think Jason also makes a good point that you're maybe necessitating that you allow the front building to have that same proportion. Is that what you want to see? If it looks okay and scale it here, and maybe if it's spread out over different sides of the building, it may be appropriate. But then a good example of what it looks like now with the lesser ratio is the front of the Avastar Park building. That's 1.5 to 1 as opposed to 1.6 to 1 or whatever this would be.
6% over the 1.15.
Of course, you can bat that one around when that one comes in.
And Dan won't be
Like
here
I
to
said, I
help
don't
us.
have a problem with
Yeah,
this
Dan,
one. I'm more
Dan doesn't
concerned
have to deal with it
with
again.
that one.
That's a good point. And Scott, coming from the zoning board, he knows what you're talking about as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would rather say stick to the 1.5. They can spread it over 4 signs to get it where it needs to be in compliance.
So they hog the big sign and give the other guys the little signs?
Hey, they're the first in, they're the ones probably paying the bulk.
That is true.
Yeah, I'm inclined to say it's a pretty minor change that we're asking for to the other of your argument there, Tyler. And we're in a phase early on in the process where I don't think that that's too challenging a task to make that adjustment, so.
I'm gonna step out. It's my anniversary and I haven't seen my wife much. So, thank you.
All right, I think we've identified all the issue areas, and I'll leave it up to whoever offers the motion to word the resolution of this last item. Oh, you're right.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
Sounds like Tom supported.
Okay, we got a motion and supported to open the public hearing. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thanks, Tom. Any other comments from the audience? Okay,
Motion to close the public hearing.
motion by Steve, supported by Tom to close the public hearing. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Now the motion.
Okay.
Next that, I have a, just.
Oh, did you
your
make the
markup is
corrections
even better,
for me?
But I just
That
made
is
one strike in that bottom part. so
Way
just need to
better.
highlight
Thank you very much. All right. I'll make a motion for case 19-847 to approve the request by Pinnacle Construction Group on behalf of owner Waters View LLC, in their application for a preliminary area site plan amendment to adjust the lot lines and preliminary building layouts proposed on lots located at 2134 Alpine Avenue Northwest and 2189 Avastar Parkway Northwest within the Avastar Park Commercial Planned Unit Development Project. So is that the first motion then? Okay.
Yes. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded, or has it been?
Second.
Seconded by Jason. Any other comments, questions? Being none, I will call it to question. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
All right, for case 19-847, I will make a motion to approve the request by the applicant for a final area site plan to develop the proposed lot at 2189 Avastar Parkway Northwest into a 15,700 square foot building with 3 tenants, including a minor automotive repair business and 2 additional tenants, along with parking, stormwater detention, landscaping, and other improvements, subject to the following conditions and based on the findings of fact noted below. Conditions of final area site plan approval. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the planning director's letter dated 11/25/2019. The applicant agrees to all conditions noted in the city engineer's letter dated 11/26/2019. Use restrictions per section 94-185B and 94-2133J of the Walker zoning ordinance. Number 1, to ensure the consistency between this site and desired future character of adjacent sites according to the Walker Master Plan, limits on high-intensity uses which generate significant noise and outdoor activity are important, and therefore the following uses are not permitted. Outdoor car washing, automotive sales, wrecker service with storage of vehicles included, collision servicing, including body, frame, and fender straightening or repair, overall painting or paint shop, and vehicle steam cleaning. Proposed signage PUD benefit, findings of fact per section 94-220. I guess how are we going to word this? Because I would like to see the limitation to the existing standard. And I'm kind of seeing it. Okay, so do I read just so I read the bottom one, right?
Maybe we should put it in prior to the findings of fact.
Okay. So,
Then it's correct.
okay, so I should just,
Part of the, yeah, then it's
read it
directly
now.
part of the motion.
yeah. So, for the proposed signage, the signage will be limited to a ratio of 1.5 square feet of wall sign area per 1 lineal foot of building frontage on Avastar Parkway / Voorhees Avenue for a total area of 339 square feet of total signage, which is consistent with the following findings and therefore is acceptable. The proposed sign package is consistent with the scale and ratios of signage granted to other commercial sites in the Avastar Park commercial PUD project area. A more appropriate overall project can be achieved by allowing this sign area, and a restriction to a lower area of wall signage is not required to prevent driver distraction and ensure public safety. Is that all correct? Okay. Proposed parking PUD benefit, findings of fact per section 94-221, the proposed parking shortfall whereby 71 off-street parking spaces are required under section 94-467 of the Walker zoning ordinance, and only 69 off-street parking spaces are proposed, is acceptable because, due to non-conforming hours of operation design of the circulation and parking plan, the total parking and load requirements can reasonably be reduced, and that would further be amended to say that, based on the changes to circulation that they will be making to accommodate the removal of the space for the handicap parking at the overhead door.
I think what he was gonna be doing is, he made them wider than they needed to be.
Okay, so they're just gonna refine that, so,
You're gonna take care of it.
okay.
It might be nice if we had the freedom, if we had to lose just one, unless you've done the map already, I mean, just if we lose one, it's not the end of the world, right?
Okay, so just for that part, giving staff some autonomy to
That'd be awesome.
sort that out is what I was going for.
Yep.
In the findings of fact, do we also want to note that they have the ability to park inside of the facility?
I don't know if I'd want to go there.
Well, what it does is it justifies having a lesser amount of parking spaces.
Yeah.
It allows us to justify it.
Because in the evenings, there'll be cars parked in there, that's parking spot.
Right.
Okay, so once we get to that part of it, I'll make mention of that. Okay, so findings of fact per section 94-2133G stated in the affirmative and based on the content of the revised final area site plan dated 11/20/2019, the proposed development conforms to the City of Walker 1998 master plan and the City of Walker 2007 subplan 3A future land use plan. The development does meet applicable standards of the City of Walker zoning ordinance, the City of Walker stormwater ordinance, and other applicable city, state, federal codes and laws. The proposed development will be served by adequate streets, services, and utilities. The proposed development's appearance will be harmonious with adjacent uses with respect to architectural treatments, landscaping, signage, and the enclosure of principal uses. The proposed development provides adequate routes of traffic to, from, and within the site. The proposed development provides convenient and safe pedestrian routes. The proposed development does adequately address on-site parking with the inclusion of the ability for parking to be accommodated inside the building. Noise, light, or other external effect from any source whatsoever which is connected with the proposed development will not adversely affect adjacent and neighboring lands or uses. The PUD does not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities and services. Is there anything we're missing there?
Yeah, we need to go back to conditions of final site plan approval, and the additional condition is two cross access
Yep,
agreements.
yeah,
As Dan
that's right. That was the one.
wanted to need to-
It passed through my brain and I
No,
lost it.
that's why we're all here.
Yep, so the other condition that we will add to the approval here is that we have a second cross-access agreement to the south end of the property.
That's an additional condition, or that's
Dan's
part
letter
of the
calls,
findings of fact?
no, it's an additional condition.
Okay.
Dan's letter calls for one.
Yeah.
And there, we need two.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any comments, questions? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Boy, that was a lot of fun.
We're all gonna adjourn to Tyler's house.
Yeah, that's right.
Scott's gonna be the first one at the door. He's gonna knock.
My only comment is, Stephen, great job on reading that motion, and if our recording secretary is the sole person watching this YouTube video, Carol, I will help you write that and format that, because that is that was a complicated motion, but I think it captured all the complicated aspects of that plan.
Did she have trouble because nobody is, most of us aren't. We're not.
I help her when I need to, and I also have backup here, so. Yeah, it's a constant reminder, we all need to do that, so I should clarify that, but. We have two meetings coming up, and the next one is optional, but I think it'd be good if you can find a way to make it. I know we're stacking things together between the holidays here, but next week, Wednesday, the 11th, is a public safety training from 5:30 to 7. Our police department did this a few years ago, but it predated me, so it must have been more than 4.5 years ago. But I think it's probably going to be really helpful to know what they want the protocol to be. There you go. It is. There you go. So
It's good to talk through it so that you don't freak out on Alice.
so we have another meeting review yet. Two more meetings. There's a training next Wednesday at 5:30, and there's the December 18th. Going out with a bang. There's sorry, I shouldn't use that term after talking about open carry, but on December 18th we have a heavy agenda again. We're going to have Northridge East PUD project, which is the project that's going to lead to our finishing of Northridge Drive, which will be a good thing. They have their first real site plan in for review, and in the Lewis Farms Winchester Woods area, it's sort of the tail that wags the dog. The Winchester Woods Phase 3 plat project, they're itching to get their final design in for that, and of course that opens up the underlying overall project plan. So there are notices out for that, and that'll be on the agenda too. So try to keep things focused, and I'll try to help you do that, but two big items on the December 18th agenda.
I have one quick question for you, Dan, and this kind of pertains here because I'm just wondering, Valley Site Farms is on the agenda for the city commission.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we seeing that at that level? I haven't looked at what the whole
Yeah.
deal is with it.
So platted residential projects, and there's different municipalities kind of go through the processes different ways, and there are different ways to divide residential land. So it gets really confusing. But for platted subdivisions, in Walker, we have a tentative preliminary plat review and a final preliminary plat review. So you can think of that as 2D and 3D. And it kind of mirrors the aspect of PUD projects where you have a preliminary area site plan, final area site plan. But this is for the land division of a plat. You have a TPP and an FPP.
Okay.
You guys see both of those steps, and so does the city commission. But after the final preliminary plat, that's when the design drawings come in. That's when all the detail is out there and they actually begin construction of the roads and public infrastructure. So it's after the roads are done, what we have to say is that the roads are real and are being accepted by the city, and the plat is real for purposes of dividing the property up and allowing individual homes.
So you're saying
to be
though
built.
we've already done all of the work that we do on it here?
You've done all the work you're
And
gonna
that's
do
why,
on it, so
okay.
now the city commission just has to accept or approve.
Because I was
the
just
layout of
wondering
the
if there
final
were like
plat.
changes happening and that's why we were, but
Not
Appreciate
changes so much as
clarification.
there are a few loose ends, just in the way of recording some documents, getting some final construction benchmarks checked out.
Super critical step because it's the day that we take over the roads. Once we take over the roads, then all the lots can become lots. So they gotta go together.
Mm-hmm, that's right. All right. Thanks, everybody.